Chapter 9. Georgie hardly slept at all that night. He kept thinking about how he should go apologize to Andy. He almost did it 100 times. Once he even walked all the way to Andy's room, and he was totally ready to walk right in and tell Andy he was sorry. But then he remembered Nona Rosa. Wouldn't she be mad if Georgie woke her up in the middle of the night? So Georgie went back to his sleeping bag. As the night wore on, Georgie figured out whose fault everything was. It sure wasn't his. The dog walking business was his idea. He was right about that. And it wasn't Andy's fault either. Not really. No, Georgie realized, the whole dumb fight was baby Godzilla's fault. If it hadn't been for that stupid, not yet a baby, Georgie wouldn't have had to spend Christmas Eve at Andy's in the first place. He would have spent it with his parents, the normal way, with everything just how it was supposed to be. And if that had happened, Georgie wouldn't have been so angry when Andy asked him about Russ. He never would have reacted the way he had if baby Godzilla hadn't messed up his Christmas. Suddenly, lying there on Andy's floor, his sleeping bag tangled in a heap around his feet, Georgie had a terrible thought. For just 1 second, he hoped that the baby wasn't okay. That while his parents were at the hospital, the doctor told them, "I'm so sorry," in a very sad voice, and that the baby would never be anything more than a pencil mark 6.5 inches up Georgie's wall. Georgie squeezed his eyes shut tight and tried not to think such horrible thoughts. As soon as the kitchen clock blinked 6 a.m., Georgie padded across to the phone. He called his parents and in his quietest voice asked them to pick him up. Then he changed into his clothes from the day before and put on his coat and his hat. He wanted to leave a note to Andy to say he was sorry, even if it wasn't completely sure he was sorry. But by the time he heard his dad pull up outside, all he'd written was "Dear Andy." He crumpled the piece of paper up and shoved it in his pocket as he raced out the door. His dad looked tired and he needed to shave. He forgot to wish Georgie Merry Christmas, but Georgie didn't remind him. "I think your mom and I need to sleep for a while," he told Georgie when they were pulling into their driveway. "We're going to have to put off presents for a few hours, okay, G?" "Yeah, okay." Georgie didn't even bother to slam the car door shut. He was too tired. "Hey, Georgie," his dad called. Georgie turned. "The baby's fine, by the way. I thought you might be worried." Georgie decided he wasn't too tired to slam the front door, but he made it sound like an accident. When he finally got around to opening presents around 11, Georgie went straight for the book on rockets. He needed something to cheer him up. Klutz, he really felt like making something explode. But when he unwrapped the present, it turned out not to be a book about rockets at all. It was a book called "So You're Going to Be a Big Brother." And even though later it turned out that Georgie's parents had gotten him a bike, his first bike ever, specially designed for him, with an extra low seat and easy to reach pedals, Georgie wasn't as excited about it as he wanted to be. "Do you want me to show you how to ride it?" Georgie's dad asked. Georgie just frowned. "No thanks," he said. He couldn't make anything explode with a bicycle. "It's kind of cold and snowy out." "Oh," his dad replied. "Okay then." He sounded disappointed, but Georgie pretended not to notice. "Well, let me know when you feel like taking it out for a spin." "Sure," Georgie said, and he shuffled off to his room. All that day, Georgie didn't call Andy to apologize, because it was Christmas Day, and you weren't supposed to call people on Christmas Day. Andy was probably doing loads of important stuff with his family anyway, and he wouldn't want to be bothered just for a stupid little apology. The day after Christmas, Georgie wanted to call Andy as soon as he woke up, but he couldn't think of the right thing to say. Should he come right out and tell Andy he was sorry, or should he just pretend like nothing had happened? Finally, just after 4, Georgie called. Andy picked up the phone. "Hello?" "Hey," Georgie said. "Oh, hey." Andy didn't seem too excited to hear from him. Georgie shifted the phone under his ear, trying to remember what he wanted to say. "You want to come over for dinner? My mom's making tuna casserole." Georgie's mom wasn't making tuna casserole, but he figured he could convince her. It was Andy's favorite. "Oh, well, I can't. What?" Georgie asked. Andy sighed. "I'm going over to Russ's to watch a movie. He said you could come too if you wanted, but don't worry, I already said no because I know you don't like him." Georgie wanted to slam the phone down, but he didn't. Maybe he should have. At least it would have stopped him from saying something dumb. "You're right, I don't like him," he said. He hollered it actually quite a bit louder than he'd meant to. "That's because he thinks he's so much better than everyone else." He took a quick breath and said the thing he'd been wanting but not wanting to say for days now. And you can't be friends with him if you're friends with me. There was a pause. But when Andy started talking again, he sounded angrier than Georgie had ever heard him. Well, fine, he said. Then I won't be your friend anymore. And by the way, we're moving this summer, and I hope it's really far away so I never have to see you again. Good, Georgie shouted. I hope you do. I hope you move next door to Russ, your best friend in the whole world. I will. Fine. Then Georgie did slam down the phone, but it was much too late. Moving? Georgie had to find his parents. They'd know how to fix everything. He found them in the living room, his mom sitting on the couch and his dad in the recliner. He was about to rush into the room and tell them everything. Maybe sit next to his mom on the couch and have his parents tell him it would be all right or be okay, but then he stopped and blinked and really noticed what they were doing. Georgie's dad wasn't just sitting in the recliner, he was reading. He was reading that stupid fat book about babies. And his mom wasn't just sitting either. She was flipping through a book of knitting patterns. Knitting? Since when did his mom knit? She had one hand on her belly, too, rubbing it in slow circles. His dad looked up. Hey, G, he said. Need something? Georgie shook his head and slumped off to his room. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. Georgie, can you get that? His mom called. Georgie went to the door, and for a second, he had high hopes. What if it was Andy come to apologize? Maybe things would be all right after all. Maybe. But when Georgie opened the door, he felt his stomach sink. There was no one there. He looked up and down the street, and there was no one at all. And then he saw it. Taped to Georgie's door was a bright yellow flyer. Right in the middle, there were drawings of dogs. Really good drawings. And at the bottom was Andy's phone number. R&A Dog Walking. Best dog walkers in town.